EXP is usually a good thing, and for winning battles, you're required to gain it, but today, I wanted to make experience a bad thing, as I challenged myself to beat Pokemon Legends Arceus, collecting the least amount of EXP possible while beating the game by seeking out all Pokemon and catching Arceus. So I started the run by booting up my game, getting sent to another world with my smartphone, and stepping forward to catch all the starter Pokemon. After like 10 minutes of mashing through cutscenes, we could now pick one of these starters, and this was actually an important decision. If I wanted to receive the least EXP possible, I had to go with Cyndaquil because of his low defensive stats, which was actually important for the first fight in the game against Volo and Togepi. This fight is pretty much entirely rigged in the player's favor. Your starter Pokemon just deals way higher damage than the baby Togepi. Since you can't waste turns with items, you're usually forced to win this fight and gain experience. But if I could lose this fight, I wouldn't gain the experience. And looking at Togepi's damage, I saw a way I could lose, as if I was crit on both of the attacks Togepi went for, I could technically lose this battle and not gain any EXP. Surprisingly, I'm pretty sure this doesn't change his dialogue, and now I could head off to the Obsidian Fieldlands, where our objective was to catch 3 Pokemon. At first, I tried killing my Cyndaquil to the first wild Bidoof, so I could catch it and the other Pokemon without gaining experience. But unfortunately, if your team wipes here, Ray just revives your team, so I had to gain experience here. By talking to Ray, I found out I could despawn the current Bidoof and spawn in another Bidoof, which allowed me to guarantee the Pokemon I caught was a level 2, which I wanted because obviously lower level Pokemon give less experience. I now tried both entering battle and then catching it, and I also tried just throwing a Pokeball. From this test, I gathered that if you enter battle, you gain around twice the experience as normal. So I just threw a Pokeball and gained our first 6 experience. For the next Pokemon, Starly, I wanted to fight them and KO one of my Pokemon, so only one of them would receive the experience. As for the Pokemon that went down, it had to be Bidoof, as he was level 2 compared to Cyndaquil's level 5, which is important as lower level Pokemon gain more experience than higher level ones, which was going to be very important later on. After gaining an additional 6 experience from catching a level 2 Starly, I approached the final Pokemon, Shinx. Unlike the last 2 Pokemon, Shinx was aggressive, and this tutorial forces them to notice you immediately, so there was no opportunity to sneak up and catch them. Right now, it seemed like I'd have to enter battle to catch them, that I knew from before would cause me to gain twice the experience. So I tried my best to see if I could catch them without battling. At first, I tried to stun them with a spoiled apricorn, but that didn't work. Then I tried saving and throwing a Pokeball as soon as I loaded in, but that didn't change anything either. So I was convinced that I had to enter battle to catch them, giving Cyndaquil 13 EXP, but 25 EXP total. Now I was forced to return to Jubilife Village, and after becoming a member of the Survey Corps, we were tasked with researching a few Pokemon to reach Galaxy Rank 1, which would require us to catch more Pokemon. Luckily, Ray won't forcefully revive my team anymore, so I just had to knock my whole team out, which was easy with the Alpha Rapidash, and now catching Pokemon wouldn't result in any EXP gain. So I was free to fill out most research tasks as I pleased. The only tasks I couldn't complete were the ones that required me to defeat a Pokemon, but that didn't stop me from catching enough guys to rank up to Galaxy Rank 1. With a little more mashing, I got past the story, and now I had to fight Ray, who I intentionally lost to because winning isn't required to progress here. After this, we were sent back to the Obsidian Fieldlands where we had to fight Mai. At first, I lost to her and found out that you're required to beat her to progress here. And if you remember from before, I said that higher level Pokemon gain less experience than lower level ones. So in order to progress here, I had to catch the highest level Pokemon available here in order to gain the least experience possible from defeating Mai. So, what is the highest level Pokemon you can catch at this point in the game? Make a guess in the comment section, because it's probably not what you think it is. And while you're there, maybe like and subscribe? Initially, I thought it might be the level 60 Alakazam that you can easily reach by running past the Snorlax and heading over to Lake Verity. Another consideration was a level 62 Blissey in the mountains around Ore Burrow Tunnel. The issue is to get there, I had to make it past this bridge that was blocked by Mai, and I also had to climb up a really steep mountain. Another Pokemon worth considering was a level 65 Infernape on this island, but there seemed to be no way I could make it there without Basculation to swim across the water. I'd just drown if I tried. Additionally, there were some high-level Mass Outbreak Pokemon, like Gyarados that could appear up to level 64 normally, and the rare Alpha variation could appear as high as level 79. But from my research of Google searching one time, Mass Outbreaks only appear after you make it past Mai. And from checking Bulbapedia, non-fixed Alpha Pokemon don't start appearing until you've quelled the frenzy from the subregion's noble, in this case Cleavor. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here, as catching any of those high-level Alpha Pokemon would be impossible, because my catch odds on them right now are 0%. Indicated by them immediately breaking out of the Pokeball instead of it bouncing. Looking at a Legends Arceus catch rate calculator, there were a few ways to boost my catch odds. Unfortunately, the obvious method of lowering their HP and inflicting a status condition doesn't work outside of battle. Hitting a backstrike and using Cake Bait would help, but not enough on their own. So the main way to improve my catch chance was to catch more Pokemon and boost my Galaxy rank, which slightly improves catch rates across the board, and also by doing this, I would gain higher tier Pokeballs with way better catch rates. Right now, my goal was rank 4 to gain access to Leaden Balls that gave me about a 25% chance to catch the high level Alpha Pokemon if the right conditions were met. Also, if you're wondering, in order to make Leaden Balls, I need Black Tumblestone that I can't buy yet, so to obtain it, I'd have to break an ore deposit with my Pokemon, which would usually cause them to gain a small amount of EXP. But if I pause my game just as the items get added to my inventory, I can check my Pokemon and they haven't gained the EXP yet. So now I could save and then reload and obtain these items with 0 EXP gain, and this also works for berry trees too. Anyway, I now just ran around catching Pokemon, and randomly I heard a certain sound effect, and searched around and found a shiny Shinx, which is pretty cool I guess. Anyway, ranking up to Galaxy rank 4 was pretty annoying, and I was concerned on whether the Pokemon in the small amount of areas available to me would be enough to reach the rank. So I started looking for a way to make it past the bridge locked by Mai. By following the water west, I found this area where it seemed like it might be possible to reach the other side if I rolled in time, but after a couple attempts, I doubted this was possible, making now the perfect time for a glitch, the Super Speed glitch. To perform this glitch, I needed to lure any aggressive wild Pokemon near a steep incline that I can slide down, and while I slide down, if I take damage at the same time, I can activate this glitch, which slightly bogs out my character's movement and slightly increases her movement speed while moving normally, but significantly increases her speed if I sprint. And with the speed, if I ran off this area, I could travel slightly further than before and reach the other side of the water. So now, pretty much the entirety of the Obsidian Fieldlands were available to me. Oh, and before you ask, this doesn't let you sequence break, I still have to beat Mai to progress in the story. Now, I proceeded to just catch Pokemon, and after like 6 hours or so of catching, I reached rank 4, and now I could actually catch the Pokemon I was looking for. Before, I was considering catching a level 60 Alakazam, but since I could cross the bridge now, it seemed feasible for me to catch the Blissey. But in order to catch them, I had to make it to them, which is a problem because they're up on a mountain and I have 0 ride Pokemon right now. From this side, climbing up seemed to be basically impossible, but from the other side of the mountain, it seemed like I might be able to do it. So I tried and tried, but I couldn't quite get up. Fortunately, this problem was easily solved with another application of the Super Speed glitch, as in this state, it's actually easy to climb up steep surfaces, and now I could sprint all the way over to Blissey. With a honey cake to boost my catch odds, I could throw a backstrike Leaden Ball and catch the Pokemon that, at the time, I believed to be the highest level Pokemon I could catch. Unfortunately, this wasn't the case because mass outbreaks now started appearing, so now a level 64 Gyarados seemed to be the highest level Pokemon I could catch. The easiest way to find a specific mass outbreak was to enter and leave Jubilife Village, so I now just waited for a Gyarados mass outbreak to appear. After like 8 hours of doing this, I didn't see a single Gyarados mass outbreak, which led me to believe it might not actually be possible for them to appear until I can surf with Basculegion. But as a final Hail Mary, I headed over to Lake Verity, and by climbing up this mountain, I could drop down in an area where I could see a Gyarados in the distance. By throwing bait, I managed to get one to wander towards me, and here I could catch it. My theory here is the mass outbreaks wouldn't start appearing unless I've caught a Gyarados in the same area as the outbreak, and I think this was the correct way to think, because after like 30 minutes of searching, I sure enough did find a Gyarados mass outbreak. The only problem was catching them, as they were far into the lake out of range of my Pokeballs. No matter what I tried, they were just out of my reach. So I looked up glitches for this game and found something that would help me here, but it would also allow me to catch an even higher level Pokemon, the level 65 Infernape on that island. To perform this exploit, I need at least 2 B-barrels. Then I needed to find a somewhat steep slope heading into the water. Here, I need to throw my B-barrel out so he's swimming in the water, but really close to land. And now, what I need to do is slowly walk up to him, and eventually I can climb on top of him. Now, I can send out my next B-barrel and position him right next to the one I'm standing on. This allows me to walk over to the next one, and in theory, I can repeat this to cross any body of water without Basculegion. So I now tried my best to get across, and I failed a couple times, as moving on to the next B-barrel was kind of awkward, and sometimes I could take a huge step forward and just fall off. And I also could get stuck between them and eventually fall in the water and have to try again. Also, if I accidentally angered any nearby Pokemon indicated by the eye at the top of the screen, all my B-barrels would return to me and I'd fall in the water. Eventually, I figured out that this was easier if I was crouched so I could move more precisely, and I also started returning my B-barrels and throwing them out again to try to get them as close to the B-barrel I was standing on as possible, to make it a little more reliable to make it on to the next one. Anyway, after successfully B-barrel bridging for like 10 minutes, I made it across, encountered the Infernape, and used the usual strategy to catch it. Now, I was pretty sure this was the highest level Pokemon I could catch, but to just make sure, I encountered a couple mass outbreaks to check if alphas could spawn in them. And they do, so Infernape isn't the highest level Pokemon I can catch right now, and it's actually a level 79 Alpha Gyarados from a mass outbreak. In order to catch them, I would have to B-barrel bridge over to them, and considering that that was kind of unreliable, I had to make sure crossing the water would guarantee me an alpha. So I just checked the initial spawns, and if I saw no alpha, I would leave the area and wait for another mass outbreak. This takes a lot of time, by the way. Gyarados mass outbreaks are pretty uncommon. So while I did this, I continued to boost my Galaxy rank to be able to craft Ultra Balls. And I also caught some Eevee, which have a 30% chance to drop raspberries that improve catch odds. Once an alpha appeared, the new question was, how do I catch them? They're in the middle of the lake, and if I accidentally encounter a Pokemon, my B-barrels will return to me and I'll drown in the water. So heading for the island at the center and catching them from there seemed to be the plan. The only problem now was the wild Gyarados and Magikarp that surround the island that could easily prevent me from bridging over if I encountered them. So I scouted all around the island and found that approaching from the northwest seemed to be my best option, as no Magikarp or Gyarados were in the direct path to the island. It wasn't completely safe, as while bridging, I was usually not heading in a completely straight path, but it was reliable enough that I made it there. To catch Gyarados, I threw a Raspberry to improve catch odds, turned them around with an Oran Berry, and threw my Ultra Balls at catching me a level 78 Gyarados. Unfortunately, unlike the fixed alphas, the alphas from mass outbreaks had a random level, so this Gyarados could have been level 77, 78, or level 79. So now I had to do this all over again, and it took me 25 hours to find another alpha, so that was fun. And after making it to the island, I confirmed they were level 79 and caught them. This was, for real, the highest level Pokemon I could catch at this point in the game. And without considering resets, I had already clocked in over 40 hours. After backing up my save, just to be safe, I approached Mai, and before I defeated her, I wanted to test a situation where I would defeat her Munchlax and then feint to recoil. Like other Pokemon games, doing this just results in a loss, so unless I was missing something, it wouldn't help here, but later on, this would actually be very useful. So I just blasted Munchlax with a Hyper Beam and gained 8 more experience. After following the path forward, I stumbled upon an Alpha Kricketune, which was too powerful to catch, so I had to destroy it in battle with Hyper Beam, gaining Gyarados 22 EXP. Once we were introduced to these wacky guys, we were told to journey off to the Grand Tree Arena to quell the frenzy of Cleavor. But first, we have to prove ourselves worthy by destroying this poor Goomy, granting us 17 experience. Arena now gathered the beans and we gained Wurdeer as a ride Pokemon, indicated by this great animation where they teleport the Mind Plate into our hands. We now had to prove ourselves worthy again by defeating Arena with another Hyper Beam, gaining me 70 experience. So next, I faced Cleavor, who I made a mistake on, as if you defeat a noble Pokemon, you gain experience. So I had to get the stun animation to prompt me to send out a Pokemon, then that Pokemon could easily be defeated, and then I could end the fight and not earn any experience. Once I returned to Jubilife Village, I picked up this quest that I have to do, and we were now ordered to venture towards the Crimson Mirelands. But first, I lost this fight against Ray to not gain any experience. He now tells us that space-time distortions are now available, and from looking at the encounters in them from Bulbapedia, it looked like now I could catch a Pokemon who was a higher level than Gyarados, with a level 87 Toxicroak. But after waiting for 40 minutes, because that's how you make space-time distortions appear, I've realized that the level of the Pokemon in space-time distortions is tied to your progress in the main story. So these were pretty pointless right now, but later once I defeated the final Noble, I would have to grind these out for high-level Pokemon, which is definitely going to be fun. Anyway, in the Crimson Mirelands, there are no Pokemon that are a higher level than Gyarados, so I just advanced along the story, resulting in a battle with Volo that you don't have to win in order to progress. But in the next battle against Coin, I did have to win and gained 140 experience for destroying her Toxicroak. Once I returned to the ruins to hand in the stone tablet, I rode south to find Ursaluna, another required battle that was easy with a strong style Hyper Beam, rewarding us with 215 EXP. With Ursaluna added to our ranks, we were now tasked with finding Arizu, and after that I could head straight for the Brother Arena for a fight against the second noble, Lilligant. Like before, I just had to send out my Shinx when I got an opportunity so he'd go down, and I could finish them off for 0 experience gained. And next, we were off to the Cobalt Coastlands, where after actually just pogging, I lost this battle against Arida, and now I had to talk to this woman and then this guy, who tells us to catch a Dusclops, so I did that, along with most other Pokemon available here. With Dusclops, we could feed Basculegion, resulting in something poggers, and then these three show up, and with the power of a Fade to Black, they kidnap Growlithe, and we're tasked to head off to the Firespit Island, where I had to fight the three sisters. The first Pokemon, Obama Snow, gave 405 experience, Coin's Toxicroak gave 375 experience, and the final trainer, Charm, was our first encounter with a trainer with 2 Pokemon. And a weird quirk about experience in this game is you don't gain the EXP on the KO, and you gain the experience at the end of the battle, which was 957 for both Rhydon and Gengar. Since this was my first battle against a trainer with 2 Pokemon, I tried messing around to see if a fainted Pokemon would gain the full experience for a KO if I revived them on the second Pokemon, so they would be unalive for the first kill and alive on the second. Ultimately, this did actually lower the EXP gain, but to test this, I added another Pokemon to my party, and this actually made me realize that I've actually been making a mistake for every battle from Mai onwards, because as you can see, if a Pokemon doesn't come out in battle, they receive half the experience as normal. Usually, this wouldn't be useful, as you would have to use another Pokemon to defeat the opposing Pokemon, and then 2 Pokemon would gain experience, and that would be bad. But if the Pokemon that scored the KO then died to recoil, they wouldn't receive any experience at the end of battle, and my Pokemon in the back would gain half experience. So essentially, I've been making a mistake ever since Mai. Fortunately, I backed up my save before fighting Mai, so I could start it all over from when I had gained 25 experience total. The new plan I was using to pull the strategy off was I just weakened my Mon with a recoil move on a wild Pokemon by spamming a move that dealt no damage, like Nasty Plot. Once their health was sufficiently low, I could use Flare Blitz and both defeat the enemy and easily die to recoil, ending this first battle with me gaining 4 experience. This plan is pretty much the same for most of these, So all you need to know is I received 11 experience from Kricketune, 9 from Leon's Gumi, 35 from Arida's Glaceon, 70 from Coin's Toxicroak, and 107 from Ursaluna, bringing our new EXP total up to 261 before fighting the Misfortune Sisters. Unfortunately, since you're required to fight the sisters back to back to back, my recoil Pokemon would die on the first trainer, and my Gyarados would come out first for the second trainer, and since technically they contributed to the fight, they would gain the full experience rather than half, which wasn't going to cut it. Fortunately, I could receive half experience from all the sisters if I caught a second level 79 Gyarados, and switched between gaining experience between the two Gyarados, so I had to start heading in and out of the Obsidian Fieldlands to find Gyarados mass outbreaks, and since I now had Basculation, catching a second was much easier, but it still took me like 15 hours to find one of the right level, and while I grinded this out, I did also find a shiny one. Anyway, before fighting the sisters, I KO'd one Gyarados so they wouldn't gain experience for the first fight, then in battle, I used Infernape's Nasty Plot to waste turns and drop it to low HP, so Flare Blitz could secure a double KO, granting my first Gyarados 203 experience. For the second trainer, my first Gyarados came out first, and I immediately revived both Infernape and my second Gyarados. Then I just spammed Splash until this Gyarados went down, and like the last fight, I sent in Infernape, wasted turns with Nasty Plot, dropping their HP low enough for me to defeat Toxicroak with Flare Blitz while simultaneously going down to Recoil, granting Gyarados 188 EXP. The final battle went pretty similarly. I revived my second Gyarados and Infernape, used Splash to die, then used Close Combat to take out Rhydon, and used items and a little patience to destroy Gengar, while going down to Recoil, giving Gyarados 479 EXP, and now the Misfortune Sisters were taken down. And once I was done taking down Baby's first Elden Ring boss, I could leave the Cobalt Coastlands, then get the orders to journey off to the Coronet Highlands. But first, I had to showcase my strength by having an extremely close battle with Adam, granting me no experience. With that done, I headed for the Highlands, but instead of following the main story and traversing this cave, I spent like 5 minutes Skyrim horsing my way up this mountain by just mashing plus and jumping. Eventually, I made it up and unlocked the campsite, so I wouldn't have to climb up again. Here, I just decided to catch as many Pokemon as possible, as I did plan to fight Arceus, and once I was done with that, I entered the cave to find Ingo. But I did that from the other side, which actually caused me to teleport to the intended entrance, which was strange. Anyway, after a little more story, we came upon the next required battle against Melly's Skuntank, and right now, I didn't want to win this fight, as there was a Pokemon in the area that was a higher level than Gyarados. So I had to grind for this Pokemon, which was the Cypher found in Mass Outbreaks. The alphas here could show up at one level above Gyarados at level 80, so I just grinded for this guy and ended up finding a shiny one, which I didn't even realize I had, as it doesn't really look that much different than normal. Anyway, in like 15 hours, I found a level 80 and could now defeat the Skuntank for 268 experience on Cypher. A little past these ruins, we had a required battle against Ingo, and alone, this fight was a little too hard for just Infernape. So I called in my shiny Cypher to take out Machoke and Tangela, got them killed on Gliscor, then sent in Infernape and ended the battle with a double KO with Flare Blitz for 711 experience gained on Cypher. We now got this funny guy and climbed up to the top of the mountain for another fight against Melly, this time with 3 Pokemon. Like Ingo, I led with my shiny Cypher and used Air Slash to take out Skorupi, and they also got a little chip on Skuntank before going down. Infernape now cleaned up the Skuntank and wasted turns with Nasty Plot until Zubat dropped them to low enough health for a double KO with Flare Blitz, granting my Alpha Cypher 381 experience. Next, I had to fight Electrode, and can we all agree this guy's the least fun of all the noble Pokemon? But most of the fight, you're doing nothing but running around in a circle waiting for a chance to play the game. Once I won here, we returned to Jubilife, where there was a fight against Ray, who just killed me so I didn't gain experience. The next area I was tasked to visit was the Alabaster Icelands, home to a Pokemon of a higher level than my Cypher, and fortunately, it was really easy to find, as it was just the fixed level 85 Alpha Garchomp you find here on the map. Following on in the story, we now had to fight Gayrick with a Glalie and Frostlass, who both would no problem for Infernape, giving Garchomp their first 449 experience. Next, I had to follow Green Girl around, and eventually this led to the Snowpoint Temple. And once I was done solving these puzzles for toddlers, we had a fight against these three. With the assistance of a newly caught Gallade, Infernape secured me a win here, giving my Garchomp 1054 experience. For the final battle here, we had to fight Braviary, who I just one-shot with Flare Blitz for another 540 experience on Garchomp. For proving ourselves, we now gained Braviary as a ride Pokemon, and once I was done gathering some ice, I could venture forward towards the Ice Peak Arena to fight Avalugg, who's pretty much the same as all the other nobles, just kill my whole team in battle and then throw bombs until their frenzy is quelled. According to Bulbapedia, defeating this guy actually causes the Pokemon in Space-Time Distortions to appear at their max level. So now, there was a new Pokemon I had to catch with a level 90 Alpha Rhyperior. So I literally stood still for 40 minutes to make a space-time distortion appear, and inside I observed the level of the Pokemon I was encountering. And it turns out quelling Avalugg's frenzy isn't the unlock condition to make high-level Pokemon appear. So I had to follow on in the main story where the sky goes crazy, we leave Jubilife Village, and eventually take refuge in the Ancient Retreat, where we have to pick one of these two to go on a wacky journey to visit all the lake spirits. I went with Adaman because every time I look at a radar, I get confused at what these are. Anyway, now the level of Pokemon in Space-Time Distortions is actually at the maximum. So now I do just have to wait, find a Space-Time Distortion, and hope a level 90 Alpha Rhyperior appears. If you want to know how Space-Time Distortions work exactly, this is the rate in which they appear, assuming there isn't any bad weather in the area, like rain. As for inside a Space-Time Distortion, once they activate, Pokemon spawn in waves of 1 to 3, usually 3, and this happens around about every 20 seconds. And because these last for 4 minutes, usually I'd encounter at least 30 of the normal encounter spawns. In addition to these normal spawns, there are also rare spawns, which are 3 guaranteed encounters that always appear in the same place and they don't despawn. These rare encounters are always just the Pokemon that exclusively appear in Space-Time Distortions, like Magnemite, Sneasel, and Porygon. But right now, I wasn't looking for Magnemite, so I could just ignore the rare spawns, and my usual strat to look for Rhyperior was to just hide in the tall grass so the normal waves of Pokemon wouldn't detect me. As for the rate in which an Alpha Rhyperior would appear, according to Cerebi, it was a 0.17% chance. And even if I found one, it also had to be level 90, which was another RNG check. So as you can imagine, this took a long time. And while doing this, I did end up finding a number of shinies, with a Beautifly, then a Rhydon, and finally a Dustox. After 30 hours of grinding this out, I still haven't found any Rhyperiors. I've found an alpha of pretty much every other Pokemon I could find here, but no Rhyperior. Here, I was starting to think that maybe I had to do something to make them appear, but another 10 hours later, my doubts were cleared, as sure enough, I found an Alpha Rhyperior, caught them, and won the 1 in 4 RNG check as they were level 90. So now I could venture forward to the various lakes in the game. First up was Lake Verity, where we fought a Goondra who gave Rhyperior 989 experience. Next up was Lake Valor with an Overquill, giving us another 336 experience. And finally, we fought a Zoroark in Lake Acuity, gaining us 590 EXP. Once that was done, we forged the Red Chain and set forth for the peak of Coronet Highlands, where Old Man reveals himself as a ninja and sends out Miss Magius, who goes down to 2 crunches. Then he sends in Gardevoir, who defeats Gyarados, but then gets run over by my shiny Rhydon's high horsepower. And after taking a close combat, the same happens to Sneasler. As planned, Benny's Gallade knocked out Rhydon, so my low HP Infernape could come in and secure a double KO with Flare Blitz. With Benny defeated, Rhyperior gained 3,059 experience, and now we could head for the summit, where we were faced with Kamado, who challenges us to a duel. This fight was kind of annoying because of his Clefable, who likes to boost their stats and lower Mind with Carmine and Baby Doll Eyes, which means they weren't attacking my Infernape, who I had to drop to low HP to ensure a double KO with Flare Blitz. With Carmine's offensive boosts, they could also use Psychic to one-shot Infernape, and I failed a few times here with Infernape living on like 1 HP after Flare Blitz. But eventually I succeeded by using Gyarados to take down his Braviary and Golem, then they got defeated by Snorlax, giving me an opportunity to send in my EV-trained Infernape to take chip damage with Flare Blitz. Now with some items to stall turns, I set Infernape up on the perfect HP on Clefable and ended the battle with Flare Blitz for 3,224 experience gained. After Komado begs us to save the world, I confronted Dialga, who you have to catch, which was a little annoying with their flash cannon, but I managed and earned 2,932 experience. Palkia now scares us away, so we had to find a cave to pick up some ore, but Clover then challenged us to a battle, and after easily destroying her Rhydon and Gengar for 1,597 experience, we collected the ore and back at Jubilife Village, forged the Origin Ball. So finally, I could face biblically accurate Palkia. Like the previous Noble battles, all I had to do here is find an opportunity to wipe my whole team, which you can only do after Palkia uses his charging attack where you break them out by throwing bombs. And I accidentally threw too many and dropped their health to 0 before killing my team, which would reward me with experience. So I had to fight them again, and since I knew what to do now, I easily killed off my Dialga and won the battle. The credits now rolled with 17,251 experience on the counter. But I wasn't done yet, as I still have to seek out all Pokemon and catch Arceus. After leaving my house, I made for the Crimson Mirelands, as in Space-Time Distortions, we can now find the Cyndaquil evolution line, and Alpha Hisuian Typhlosion are the highest level wild Pokemon in the game at level 91. Last time I had to farm these, I was looking for the normal spawns that periodically appear, but Typhlosion would only appear as part of the rare spawns, so each Space-Time Distortion, I would only get 3 chances to find them. Fortunately, unlike Rhyperior, the chance to find an alpha was slightly higher at 0.36%, but it still took a long time to find them, and while I waited for Space-Time Distortions to appear, I collected all the wisps in the area. Now, finding the Typhlosion took a really long time, and in this time, I found quite a few shinies, like a Porygon, an Eevee, a Tangela, a Yanma, a Bidoof, another Porygon, another Yanma, and a third Porygon. I also ended up failing a capture on a shiny Carnivine as they blacked me out, and when I returned to capture them, I forgot to feint my team and gained experience for capturing them, so I had to reset. Anyway, unlike Rhyperior, it didn't actually take that long to find an Alpha Typhlosion. The only issue is this time I got unlucky with its level, as the first one I caught was a level 88. Then the next was also level 88, and also the one after that. After over 60 hours of constantly coming short, I eventually caught the level 91 and could proceed onwards in the main story, which led to a fight against Vespiquen, which gave Typhlosion 584 EXP. At the ancient retreat, Kogita now told us the locations of some of the remaining plates, so I journeyed over to the Prelude Beach to fight Komado. With close combat, Infernape destroyed his Golem, then Komado sent in Snorlax, and Infernape, as planned, tanked the high horsepower to drop to low HP. Then I used Mach Punch and switched in Garchomp to finish them off, but they survived, healed, and switched in Clefable. Thankfully, Garchomp could muscle through Clefable's type advantage with Double Edge, but this dropped him to low HP, so the incoming Snorlax finished him off. Now, I had to send in Infernape and use a max potion to survive his next 2 Pokemon, then I could use Mach Punch to defeat Snorlax, and I sent in a revived Garchomp for his Braviary. On Heracross, I intentionally let Garchomp die, and sent in Infernape and used items to waste turns until he was on low HP, so that Flare Blitz could defeat both Heracross and cause Infernape to feint to recoil, giving my Typhlosion in the back 4,416 EXP, and rewarding us with the Fist Plate. The remaining plates required me to capture a few legendary Pokemon. Most of these were simple to capture without gaining EXP by just stunning them with Sticky Globs, then throwing Gigaton Balls from behind. With Heatran, Cresselia, and the Lake Trio added to my Pokedex, I headed for the Alabaster Icelands, where after channeling Arida's funny magic, I ventured towards Snowpoint Temple to catch Regigigas, who you can't catch out of battle, so I was forced to gain EXP here, for an additional 3,380 added to the total gained. Now, Volo led us to the Coronet Highlands, eventually leading to a battle that I actually needed a second level 91 Typhlosion to beat because of the second phase against Giratina, which would force out my Typhlosion so they gain full EXP for taking out Giratina. And if I had a second Typhlosion, I could end the battle with just them alive for slightly less EXP gain. So I headed back to the Crimson Mirelands. After about 40 hours, I found a Typhlosion, and luckily enough, they were the level 91 I needed. So now, I could head to the top of Mount Cornet to face Volo. His first Pokemon, Spiritomb, was simple to beat with Shadow Balls from my first Typhlosion, and I sacrificed to his next Pokemon, Arcanine. Now, my Gyarados came out and secured 2 quick kills, one with an Aqua Tail and another with a Hurricane. His Togekiss could take a hit however, and ended up defeating my Gyarados with some Moonblasts. I now traded KOs with Volo until he sent out his final Pokemon. That was unfortunately Garchomp, who resisted my Infernape's Flare Blitz, so securing a double KO to minimize my EXP gain seemed difficult. So I slowly chipped down Volo's Garchomp and carefully dropped my Infernape to just low enough health so I would be able to use Flare Blitz to win. Unfortunately, Infernape survived on 5 HP, so I had to try again. And to make this easier, I weakened my Infernape on wild Pokemon, so against Volo I could just send him in and easily secure a double knockout. Also, this time I defeated more of Volo's team with my Garchomp, which baited in his Garchomp as his second to last Pokemon. So now his new final Pokemon was Lucario, who would easily fall over to a single Flare Blitz, giving one of my Typhlosions 6,506 experience. But Volo wasn't done yet, as he called upon Giratina, and the battle continued. I started this fight by reviving some of my team, and I then made sure to let my first Typhlosion go down, so later I could revive my other Typhlosion so they would gain the experience for this fight. Now I tried to use Giratina's Earth powers to drop Infernape to low HP, but Giratina kept going strong style and destroying him, so I just sent out my Garchomp and used Dragon Claw to defeat the first phase. And after Giratina unleashed their true strength, Garchomp went down and I tried once again to drop Infernape to low HP. At first, I failed again, but eventually I got lucky and Infernape survived a second Earth power on 21 HP, which was perfect. Now, with Rhyperior and Garchomp, I carefully lowered Giratina's health, and when I thought they were in range of Flare Blitz, I let my team faint and sent in Infernape, boosted attack with Nasty Plot, then fired off Flare Blitz, which just barely failed to defeat Giratina, so I was forced to send in my second Typhlosion, and if I won now, they'd gain the full EXP, so I had to try again. The strategy didn't really change next time around, and I won this time, giving Typhlosion 17,016 EXP. Volo now says his farewells, and now all that was left to do was fill out the Pokédex. Most of the Pokemon I didn't have were just a case of evolving Pokemon I already had, or searching for rare Pokemon spawns of middle stage evolutions. Of course, there was now 5 new legendaries I had to catch. The first was Giratina, which you can't catch out of battle, so with just Typhlosion I had to catch it, which was harder than expected since they could one-shot him with Shadow Force. But with Carmine's defense boost, I managed and got the capture, gaining me 3,431 EXP. Next up was the 4 genies, which are possible to catch outside of battle. I just had to follow them around and break their barrier 3 times to stun them, giving me a window in which I could throw a single Pokeball. Strangely enough, I found an exploit here, which is if I ran away from Tornadus after throwing a Pokeball, when they broke out of the ball, they would immediately be stunned again, and I could throw another ball until I caught them. This didn't work on the other genies, but it didn't matter, as I didn't have any trouble catching them. Now there were only 4 Pokemon left to catch. Burmy, Wormadam, Cherubi, and Cherum, all Pokemon exclusive to Shaking Trees, which was a problem because the game forces you to battle tree encounters, and in battle if I caught them I would gain the full experience for catching them. Initially I tried to run away, but this just caused the Burmy to disappear. Next I tried throwing a Pokeball before a battle began, but that doesn't work. So then I tried to throw a Gigaton Ball up so it would come down later and I could quickly switch to a Sticky Glob to stun them. Predicting exactly where Burmy would appear was somewhat difficult, but eventually I pulled this off and it didn't work. So the only option I had left was to catch it in battle. And I didn't want to catch just any Burmy, I wanted to catch the lowest level Burmy above its evolve level of 20, so I could get 2 birds with 1 stone and evolve it into Wormadam. Strangely enough, for some reason, normal Burmy don't actually appear above level 19. so my target was a level 22 Alpha Burmy. After exiting and entering the area many times, I found a level 22 Burmy and caught it, gaining 41 experience. After evolving them into Wormadam, I set my sights on catching Cherubi, who I just wanted to find at the lowest level possible, level 15, to minimize EXP gain. Once I found and caught a Cherubi for 27 additional EXP, their mass outbreaks will now appear. So I entered and exited the Obsidian Fieldlands to find an outbreak, and in these, the Alpha Cherubi can be caught at a high enough level to evolve. And with Cherum added to my Pokedex, just one Pokemon remained. Arceus. Like the previous fights like this, I just had to wait for an opportunity to stun them and KO my Cyndaquil, and then end the battle with 0 EXP gained, ending this challenge with 37,354 experience collected in total. If you enjoyed this challenge and want to see me do this with the other Pokemon games, like the video to show me you care, and comment down below what game you think would be interesting for this challenge. Subscribe if you're cool, and have a good day. Bye.